Yeah, I'm Sam from Big Sofa. We are, some of you may have heard of us, you may not have done. We are a kind of tech and insight company that is interested in building platforms and technology that allows people to get greater meaning and insight from video content and images as well, but primarily video. And what I want to talk really about today is how video and tech and analysis kind of intersect, I suppose, really. You all will know, I know, particularly in this kind of audience, you'll all know that, video is happening so much in qual these days. There's loads of new methods that people are using, loads of new technologies that people are using. My sense is that actually a lot of the innovation that's happening around video at the moment is actually about how we capture video and how we create opportunities to create video and capture parts of people's lives, parts of consumers' lives. What we're not as much thinking about probably as an industry is how you then use that video in meaningful ways and derive insight that you previously couldn't have got to from that video. So actually we're using video in quite a traditional way still, and what we're kind of thinking about is actually, well, how do we make the most of that video and derive additional data, additional insight that we couldn't have got to normally. And then obviously, say we're a tech company, so I'm interested in the role that tech plays in that. So I'm interested in the role that human beings play in being able to interpret and analyze video, subjectively with your skills as qual researchers. But we're also interested in how tech can help us with that. And I'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. And yeah, one of the ways which we think about it a lot, and one of the ways I want to talk about, is in this thing of tags. And I know tags exist everywhere in life now. I mean, God, and anywhere on social media, all you'll see is tags everywhere. But I think they have a real power they can play for us in this sector in how we think about a mixture of how we classify information as a sector. So actually when we're looking at video, how we classify behaviors, how we classify narrative and what people are saying, then how we actually analyze and interpret it, but then lastly, actually then how we use tags to start telling stories, to start telling people what we want them to engage with and how we want them to engage with it, both as agencies and actually then particularly where as agencies we're presenting information to end clients, tags have an ability to actually tell stories themselves as well. But I want to go back a step, I guess, first of all, and think about why as a sector we are capturing video and the ways that generally people are using it right now. And here's an image that I guess everyone will have seen at some point, a very familiar one, a kind of slightly blurry focus group recording, which is what video was for a long time in this sector. But actually, what I think this kind of video is, from my experience, is it's actually video as a record of what happened rather than as a thing that we use proactively. It's the thing where you do a set of groups, you as a researcher know what happened and know what your story is and know how you've analyzed it. And really all the video is a thing you then come back to at the end if you want to find a nice quote or if you want to be able to show your client a clip from it. And then there's a lot of kind of video as what I might call context. So we talk a lot again about video bringing to life quant data, qual bringing to life quant data, or helping get organizations closer to their customers. And these kind of images we got here, I guess a lot of that is happening in mobile form these days. So actually, using people's smartphones, tablets to capture video really quickly, really easily of them talking about subjects. And it's great. You drop that into a presentation. It brings that insight to life. You get someone giving you the perfect soundbite for that point. Then there's a kind of emerging thing, which I guess is partly kind of linked, I guess, slightly to more ethnographic research, but also this desire in client organizations for high quality content to help connect people to insight as well. So actually, sometimes the very grainy, authentic video is what you want, but actually sometimes you just want something really high quality of someone saying exactly what you want them to say. And we know that where video has real power in organizations, it operates on both of those modes. Authenticity has real power, but actually sometimes really high quality polished films that you can present and they go viral in client organizations, they also have power. And so we see these kind of, really high quality setups in people's homes, very kind of staged smartphone moments or whatever. I'm sure Barack Obama's being very genuine there, but very kind of staged moments. And they generate really high quality content. What they don't necessarily generate is as much authenticity. And actually, again, you're not using the video to further analyze it. You're using it to make a point or to somehow illustrate things. And so really what we're talking about, I think, in that mode is video as illumination. So actually, it is that bit about bringing customers to life. It's a bit about adding context and detail around an insight that you already have. What we're not doing is actually using the video itself as a thing that we can analyze to uncover more depth and detail from. And these are the kind of, you know, so when I talk about tags, you know, the way that in our company, the way we think about kind of tagging and analyzing video, this is the kind of, I guess what I might call a fairly basic set of uses that probably are familiar to people here, where, you know, you are just getting those key moments, key quotes. You're looking for nice visuals that you can put in front of a client. You might, if you're talking about long groups and you want to show a client it, you might actually be just trying to chapter that video up. So if you've got an hour and a half focus group, you can just tag 20 minutes of it and say, well, this is the bit where they're talking about that product or that brand or whatever. And then we know there's a particular interest in, and this is, I'll come back to this bit a little bit later as well, but actually in how we then connect consumer language and the way consumers talk about things to the way that organizations and brands talk about things. So actually reframing what consumers are saying by tagging things using organizational language, for instance. So that actually then when you're engaging with it as a brand, you know what your language is and you actually help to reinforce that kind of language that way as well. But I want to talk mainly today about something a little bit different. I want to talk about video as a source of data. And when I say data, I know it's a word that has kind of implications, I guess, and particularly for this audience, what I'm not talking necessarily about is Quant 360, let's go and talk about loads of spreadsheets and numbers, although that is a part of it. I more mean it as a way of, it's a different mindset, I guess, is what I'm talking about. Approaching video and video analysis with the mindset of what more information can I extract from this, rather than how do I prove my point that I've already decided on, or you know, as much. And actually what I'm talking about, I guess, is, you know, a lot of those approaches I was showing before were about what I might call slightly more traditional methods in some respects, very heavily dialogue-based, very much about questions and answers. So actually, I have a business question, I'm going to ask you about it, and you're going to tell me about it. And I know that, you know, I'm a qual researcher myself. I know sometimes we have projects like that, and you know, you can try and lay out nice kind of discussion guides, etc., that make it that are more expansive and exploratory. But fundamentally, it's all being led by a business need and by your questions to a respondent. And actually, a big part of video's data is moving to a world that is much more about observation, I think, and actually people showing you what they're doing, not just telling you about it. You know, there's a whole another talk in that one I know about the gap between reported behavior and actual behavior, for instance, and we all see it all the time. That's one for another day, probably. But I think this principle is that the observation and a more passive kind of approach to how we capture video yields a massive amount of richness from our side, which I'll talk more about. One of the challenges I know with that, we have clients who we've spoken to who will say, well, every time we've tried to do observation, you end up with 3,000 hours of video. So, you know, what the hell can anyone do with that? And I think that's been part of the barrier to doing much more of that kind of work so far. But actually, I think what we're seeing is technology starting to open that field up so it doesn't become quite so difficult to deal with. And there are, you know, in terms of observation, there are tons of new methods out there. I mean, we heard just before from Sabina a really interesting talk about virtual reality. Obviously, I've got, I know you were talking about automotive. Obviously, Shopper is a huge application. We know we see that growing a lot. Wearables, slightly, you know, well, not quite as good as those ones, but you know, glasses or GoPros for people to actually wear around their lives or in their homes. Mobile, obviously, you know, still massive growth there. And also increasingly kind of fixed cameras in people's homes, actually. So if you can put a camera in the corner of someone's kitchen and leave it there for a week, what might you actually find out from that? And what is the breadth as well as the depth of detail and insight that you might be able to get from that? And then things like 360-degree filming. So actually, you know, even on a more practical level where you are doing groups, reinventing what film looks like in a focus group so that you don't have your kind of camera in the corner of a room just filming in a very kind of blurry way where you can't see people's faces, but actually putting the camera front and center and actually redesigning groups to say, we actually want video to be at the heart of what the output from this is, because we want to be able to use that video, we want to be able to analyze it, and we want to be able to deliver it to our client. So it's a different way, and rather than being framed initially by what is my specific research aim, you start to, or what quotes do I want, you start to say, actually, how can video enable us to capture things we couldn't capture before, and enable us to present that information in different ways and new ways to our clients as well. So I want to very quickly show you a video. I mean, this is exactly the kind of stuff I was talking about, I guess, where this is an image before I get to the video slide. You know, it's a bit blurry. It's very authentic. This is a woman in Britain in her home doing laundry with her husband, lucky him, filming her on a mobile doing the laundry. But this is the kind of approach where actually it's really, really easy to do in field. Fundamentally, it's a bit more observational. There's very little questioning being done here, except for basically film yourself. Can you film doing your laundry for us? That's pretty much all we said. And I think, yeah, I'll play the video, and you can see actually. I think what I'll be interested in is how much information you see within this video when you're watching it. And now I have to figure out how I actually play the video. Sorry, thanks, Irene.
Put the clothes in first, or the towels in first. I'm not fussy how I do it. I just throw them in as much as I can get in. I don't separate the colours from the whites. That locks in, and I add a colour catcher because I'm not separating. Now to add the detergent. 1, 2, we live in a hard water area. And I use the laundry cleanser. Two of those. Shut the drawer. And it's going on a number, I think I'll leave it on a number 3. And I'll do it on a number 5, and I'll do it on a 60. That's a fast wash, and I put it up to 1200 spin because they're thick towels, and that's it.
Okay, so there's lots to digest in there, I guess, and one of the observations I would make, just even from watching it there, and also just kind of hearing you all react to it as well, is that straight away you've engaged with that video in a different way to how you often would when you're looking at video from a study. Because admittedly, one part of that is that you've never seen it before. It's the first time you've seen it, and you weren't there at the point when it was filmed. But actually, by saying to you, I'm interested in how much you're seeing in there and where the richness is, etc., you've all kind of watched it probably far more closely than you normally would if you were doing it in a study and you were just reviewing the videos to find those couple of clips for the client at the end of it. And actually, the way we might talk about that video is as a massive series of data points. And again, I'm using the word data in quite a broad sense. Because what we've seen is a massive window into someone's life there. I mean, fundamentally, this is about windows into people's lives and what we can learn from them. So I'll go to this. I'm in quant mode very briefly, and bear with me for this. So what I can say is that in the course of that video, you know, in a quant survey, you would have asked someone a ton of questions about what brands they're using, what products they're using, how they do things, and you would have got responses to that, but they would have been reported responses, and they might not necessarily have been connected to how people actually do things, and they would probably have been wrong in quite a lot of places because people are terrible predictors of their own behavior, and even things like when you say to someone, do you have, I'll be very detailed here, when you say to someone, do you have a large detergent or a small detergent? Well, what does large look like? How do I define what large is? The way that me as a client might think of that in my organization could be really different to how I as a consumer think about that. So it's all very subjective. So all of these things then actually in a video, an unstructured video response that it seems to be qualitative, become things that you can measure and quantify if you want to, and you can observe. So, you know, I've got a few of them here. Things about the brand and the products and all that kind of stuff, the time of day we could even extract from the video, the dosing behavior, the setting and temperature and spin speed and stuff. And then you've also got a load of qualitative behavior. This is where we start getting into this kind of blurring between quant and qual. Because actually, you know, is a quant researcher, apologies for anyone out there who is, who also wears a hat, is a quant researcher interested in the messy kitchen and what the person's wearing while they're doing the wash? Probably less so. That's a very qualitative thing to be interested in because that's way more about someone's life and about the context that sits around it. But actually in this world, those things become interesting and quantifiable as well. And the same with behavior. I mean, I've got loads of behaviors in here about how they're loading the machine, how they're putting the products in, how they're sorting the clothes. You know, I heard you all laughing about the slightly interesting, well, pink clothes she was going to end up with, essentially, from red and white being mixed. But there's loads of qualitative context in there as well. And that's before I even get into stuff that's about dialogue. So all of that was based on there being no dialogue in the video whatsoever. And then I've got her talking in a very, actually I think you'd probably agree, quite natural way for a minute and a half. It's only a minute and a half, that video. And there's loads of stuff in there as well about, you know, her talking about not being exactly sure what what she's doing right and how she should be doing it, the kind of very imprecise language she uses, the way she seems on autopilot a little bit as she's doing things. Some context, so like where she was pouring 2 cups of that detergent in, and we all went, what the hell are you doing? Well, she's saying that's because the water in my area means I need to do that, so actually that behavior becomes, it gives context to that behavior. So there's loads of stuff in the dialogue as well. And if I were to just kind of map out, I mean, this is a really broad way of categorizing this. If I were to map out the things that we are seeing in very broad terms. Oh, sorry, one thing I would just say about that. So overall, in that video, we've probably actually got, well, I don't know, like 35, 40 different things that we can be looking for in a video. I'll leave you with that thought. I'll come back to that as well in a second. But if I were to map out generally the kind of stages of the video, we, again, as researchers, when we're analyzing video at the moment, we tend to do it in quite a linear way. We start at the beginning of a video, we end at the end of a video, and then we move on to the next video, because that's the only way we can do it right now. You know, that's been the way. You have your file on your desktop, you watch it. That means that as a researcher, you are looking for, if you are trying to analyze a video, and this is, again, 1.5 minutes. I mean, imagine this was an hour-long depth interview with someone. You're looking for so much, and you're in this mode where you're trying to look for new points of data and new interesting things. You're trying to take on board so much information in an hour, and as a researcher, there's a kind of cognitive load effect. You know, there's only so much you can physically see in front of you at any given point before your brain just becomes saturated with information. But what technology starts to allow us to do, and again I'll come back to this in a bit, is to start honing in on things. So how would you analyze differently if you were to be able to analyze an entire set of videos just looking at that one behavior that you're interested in? So if I said, rather than trying to analyze, let's say we had 50 of those. The project that came from, by the way, we had 2,000 videos. Let's say we had 50 of them. Imagine if, imagine if you want to say, well, actually, I really want to just focus on the bit where they're putting the product in, and what kind of extra detail and extra depth and extra breadth of understanding would you reach from just being able to look at that particular behavior across 50 videos really rapidly? It's what I guess we might call it kind of horizontal analysis rather than linear or vertical analysis. And the kinds of things that you might start to be interested in that world are where are the subconscious behaviors. You know, these are just examples. This will be different for every sector you work in some respects. But where are the subconscious behaviors? Where are the micro, tiny details of behavior that actually might have massive commercial implications that you wouldn't spot when you're trying to look for everything? How does the narrative overlay with that? What's the language people use around that particular behavior? And, you know, where are their emotional touch points as well? And if you start to home in on that one behavior, you can actually start to examine all 5 of those things in far more detail than you ever normally could when you're trying to look at each individual video. So here is an example. I just separated out just the point in a couple of videos from this study we did. I separated the point at which they were pouring product into the machine out. And there is tons, I mean, I guess this is why I don't get invited to dinner with anyone anymore, because I become fascinated by this stuff. But there is tons of detail in here that actually is loaded with implication in terms of like product formats, and, you know, actually fundamentally, you know, the composition of a product. So there are things about, look in the top right, where look at the way they shake the cap out, or they tap it on the drawer, or the fact they're even free pouring, they're not even using the cap. There's absolutely tons in this, and I've just taken 4. Like I say, there were 2,000 of these. Don't worry, I won't go into any more detail on them. But it's this principle that actually at a point when we can horizontally analyze, we open up a whole world of new stuff that we can be looking at. And so that's the kind of stuff you might be able to get out of it. And then come back around to where I started, thinking about what tags are. Well, actually, if you are able to organize all that video into platforms and systems that allow you to conduct that kind of analysis, actually all of this stuff is taggable. And all that stuff means that you can come back to that again. As a researcher, you can come back to just the bit where the dosing behavior is in and look at those videos. You can actually start to tag into use different layers of tags, essentially, to get into real granular detail where you want, or to stay at a high level where you want. And actually, you can also start to then use that as, as an agency, from an agency side, I suppose, you can start to use that information with research, with your client. You can start to help them see the world in the level of detail that you do and help them understand everything that sits around their world as well through using tags to do that. And you can get emergent behaviors as well. So this is a bit blurry, but for anyone unsure, this is a man making soup in his washing machine. So you will see, again, the nature of having massive amounts of video and being able to examine it in detail is you can actually, understand emergent behaviors and get the context that sits around them as well. And where that ends up is in what you've probably heard other people talking about, which is mass qual. So actually what we've got there is, I said we had 2,000 of these videos. There's actually a quant study we did this in. What we've got is 2,000 videos which have simultaneously quantifiable data, but also are a massive source of rich qualitative information as well. And that's where we need as an industry to think about how those two things come together and how we apply the right skill sets to the same sets of video, actually. Okay, so I'm very aware that where that can lead you if you're not careful when I talk about disappearing down this kind of rabbit hole of insane detail is complete information overload. Like, how do you know what matters when everything is taggable and everything is quantifiable? How do you kind of sort through it? And I think that's where, I mentioned kind of tech is helping us do some of this work, but it's also where human beings come back into play again. Because actually, just because you can tag everything, just because you can see everything, your skills as researchers mean you know what is commercially useful all the time, and actually being able to engage with clients, agencies and clients engaging together around this kind of micro detail starts to take you towards a more collaborative approach to what matters and what doesn't matter, because you're not second guessing things as an agency, and your client is also being opened up to things they may have never considered before. And so you apply a bit of kind of commercial thinking and a bit of subjectivity to it. I'll finish up. I know I'm running out of time. I'll be very quick. So the question is, will tech save us from this information overload? My answer in terms of what technology can do right now is that it's really good at classification. It's very good at counting things and spotting things that it understands. So here, I put this through Google Visions API, which I know sounds easy. It's one of the best out there, obviously, as you'd expect. And fair enough, it's seen some stuff, but again, it's not seen as much stuff as we might want it to. It's seen that we're seeing a washing machine, we're doing laundry, etc. But it's quite good at classification. Don't ask me where I found that image. That's a different conversation once again. But let's see how the tech does at interpreting what's in the image. Now, it can tell me that there is a toy, possibly a robot, an action figure. It doesn't think it's it doesn't think it's an adult image. It thinks it's a child-friendly image. But the point is that it can spot things, but it has no idea what's actually happening in that image. And it's the same with video. So where we see tech is actually about workflow and processing, being able to put a ton of video into a system, being able to do some basic classification, help it organize, transcribe, translate. But actually, we are still saying, I know lots of people will say AI can solve everything. Our answer would be no, it can't right now. We as researchers need to use interpretation, our skills, to be able to analyze and interpret, and then to work with our clients on the storytelling bit within these kind of massive sets of video as well, and how we actually activate that kind of video and make it useful in organizations. And fundamentally what I'm talking about there, I guess, is therefore a new way of looking at video, of seeing video, which is more about this kind of constant iterative process to a certain extent, where you are classifying information where you can and using that as your baseline for how you then navigate and explore video, but then also interpreting it and actually then presenting that information back to a client, again, collaborative portals where clients can actually see what you're doing as you're analyzing, and refining that process so that you're actually tagging and analyzing in a way that makes most sense to them as an organization. Okay, so I'll be very quick because I know I haven't got time. So the kind of things, I guess, that I'm, in summary, one, a massive trend towards observational approaches and capturing consumer behavior is where we see video heading. Smart collaborative frameworks for how you do organize, classify, and analyze that video, which are formed together between agencies and clients, not in isolation. The codification and quantification of data within video, a huge opportunity there that we're only just scratching the surface of. Interpretation where it's most commercially useful. That's the point, again, about you as qual researchers being able to apply your judgment and your understanding of categories in making sense of all this. And this point about collaboration, I think, comes back really, really strongly for me, which is that this works best when it is agencies and clients doing it together to create a shared understanding of what video can do for you. And it also leads, which again is a whole other conversation, to video mining. So actually, when you take video from 20 projects, what can you then do by looking across that video, whether it's come from Ethno, from a product test, from a UNA, you know, whatever it is, actually, how do you then use that video from across all your studies and derive additional meaning from it as well? Just about on time.